Hello and welcome to another thrilling episode of the Ask Blue podcast. I'm here today with Ade Thompson. Do you prefer Adrian or Ade? I always call you Ade, but we can be more professional on this one.
Everyone calls me Ade, so
we'll go with Ade. Okay, so welcome to the Ask Blue podcast. Really pleased to have you here joining us today from ImageHolders.
Thank you.
Welcome. Just give us a bit about your background, just to start with, just to tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So my background's career's been in product design. Before ImageHolders, I ran a separate company that developed product that was also a consultancy. And over the years, I found myself getting involved in projects where organizations were trying to implement technology into solutions to effectively simplify user journeys. That was very difficult, or tech startups were trying to take a piece of normally very clever, bright technology that they developed and then effectively take that to market, which they found very difficult. They often had burnt, millions of pounds in R&D, but hadn't really thought how to make that technology user-centric. And therefore scalable. And I saw over the years multiple failures of really good tech that could have been implemented and scaled, but didn't, because it was badly managed, or there wasn't a true vision, or it was just about the R&D and not the big picture.
So essentially the tech was good, great technology, but just not in a deliverable way so that people could actually use it, right?
Yeah, and from a product design perspective, when you look at technology that is scaled and been implemented in the history of the human race, from the wheel to the iPhone, if it's easy to use and it's kind of user-centric, it scales and it carries on. And you get variation on it. If you look at the wheel, there are hundreds of millions of wheels, from cartwheels to little gears in mechanical objects.
One of my favourite statistics about the wheel is that the largest manufacturer of tyres in the world is Lego.
There you go. So think about
scalable, right? That's scalability.
The variation just within Lego of wheels is or round things.
The only thing that doesn't vary in Lego is the haircuts, right?
That's a good point.
It's not relevant to the podcast.
Well, that's it. But there's still variation because they've got variation in colour.
I guess they do, yeah.
So that's sort of like 70s Danish hairstyle, I think. It hasn't just...
It's a classic, right? There's no improving on the 70s Danish hairstyle.
It just clearly hasn't moved on. But, it's...
No offence to any of our Danish colleagues that are watching this.
It's variation. It's about making things user-centric, easy to use, intuitive to use. That is the key to success. And, to recognizing those problems, being on the outside of them, and then eventually going, well, look, how do I start a business that, rather than to try to invent that technology, effectively houses that technology in a very user-centric manner, and recognizing that, as the digital revolution 11 years ago when we started ImageHolders was basically IoT, with tablet technology, apps, etc. The emergence of being able to make devices interact with each other far more elegantly, without big servers and with massively reduced sort of infrastructure expense, was really the catalyst to ImageHolders. Seeing the ability to use back then tablets for self-service. And then, the last decade that's emerged through, or developed, through the, introduction of like Type-C technology that allows power and data to pass through devices. That makes that even easier. And then you've got, AI, machine learning, and so we're still in that IoT revolution, but then we've got the AI revolution. We've got edge computing. They're all interrelated to each other. So we're in this, transcending massive technological revolution that we'll probably drill into over the course of this.
Yeah, definitely.
But
into that.
That's how ImageHolders came in. It's about, ImageHolder is the client and holding their image, supporting their image, holding it. So we're actually producing solutions that effectively resonate with the client's brands and can be tailored. And as technology grows, there's a growing demand and expectation from clients to be able to tailor and resonate with the brand. So that's our core purpose.
Yeah. Excellent. I mean, I think leads us neatly into starting to talk about ImageHolders. Obviously, we've known you for quite a few years. My view of what you are, and you feel free to challenge me on this, is very much about self-service, about kiosks. I'm sure that the vision of the company is much more beyond that. But from a Blue Star perspective, one of the areas where we're seeing the most accelerated growth at the moment is in that self-service space. We're seeing a huge interest in automation, particularly in hospitality, but that expands out into retail, transport, logistics, healthcare as well. So it's a really interesting market for us at the moment. If we look at the vendors that we work with, there's a lot of development going on in terms of the products that we can offer to our resellers in that market. And I think what you're doing is a different take on that than how we're doing that. Although there's certainly some crossover there. But I was looking into this, trying to work out myself a little bit about why is this growth happening and some global market size statistics. So, $34 million market in 2024 with a projection to reach 62 million.
340 million.
That is, have I got that right? Let me see. No, I've got,
billion,
maybe it is 34. Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. There's a comma in there that I didn't see. At least someone knows what they're talking about here, right? So this is why we bring on proper industry guests to just to fact check me. I check the facts, and then you check the facts that I've checked. Yeah, so 34 billion in 2024 with a projection to reach 62 billion by 2030. Thanks for spotting that one. That was a fairly fundamental error there. Yeah. So that's it's an 11% compound annual growth rate. So you know what that stands for from 2025 through to 2030. So whichever way you look at it, whether it's going from 34 million to 60 million or 34 billion to 60 billion, the growth is huge. That's globally. So and sort of back to ImageHolders. I mean, what's your view of that? What's your take on the on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just huge growth. Like any technology, we're living, as anyone can see, you've got, we're removing transactional roles through technology. Self-service, it's somebody taking a transaction to, basically take some money off somebody. That would have been cash in the past, and then it would have been card, where it's a self-checkout or, so automating these things, being able to capture data, capture tokens of, your credit card is essentially a token, your debit card. In the future, already your face might become that token. So you might be able to pay through biometrics, for example. It might be some kind of two-step verification of that, where you need to touch the screen or, to verify. There's lots of nuances around that. And again, there are variants within different industries.
I mean, you've got that on your phone already. So what's the difference between having that on your phone and having that on a...
well, that's a really important point. So, rather than thinking of things as a kiosk or a purely in self-service, if you think about the scope of self or assisted service, that they're, and rather than the word kiosk, think of a terminal or what we call a digital endpoint.
Mm-hmm.
These are all points where you can't finish that transaction just on your phone.
Yeah.
Then you've got other elements like accessibility for people with various disabilities, from blindness, partial sightedness, physical disability. There's a whole host of other disabilities, deafness, partial deafness. That's a world in itself. And then you've got what we call like digital exclusion. So if you've lost your phone or your battery's flat and you're traveling, which is quite likely, it's happened to me, and you're at an airport, you can't make a transaction. So
you just got off a 12-hour flight to Vancouver or whatever, and your phone battery's dead, and you
fell asleep, you forgot plugging in, the charger on the plane doesn't work, you forgot your cord.
Do any of them actually work, those chargers on the planes?
Occasionally. But, the statistics are that at least 22% of any society in the world, and probably higher, are digitally excluded through either accessibility issues or technology issues at some point on any given day. 20%, that's 1 in 5. Yeah. That's a huge...
Well, even in sort of developed countries, right?
Absolutely. Even in US, Western Europe. Yeah. There's people who've got various learning difficulties as well, might not be able to read. Different languages. You start to think about, how, transcending different cultures, languages. So our core purpose, really, or vision, is through the use of incredibly user-centric design, the use of technology, is to make our solutions accessible for everybody, irrespective of where they live, who they are, what language they speak, what level of disability. And we can only do that by utilizing technology and pushing that into the solutions, challenging and educating our clients, because people don't know what they don't know. And often in larger, more complex organizations, that becomes more of a challenge because they're so big, they're so busy, you've got different departments. You have to kind of align those stakeholder requirements. And that's given image holders this incredible kind of global insight and sort of partner ecosystem from software vendors, device vendors, the guys who actually make all the technology, the companies that make the printers, the cameras, the scanners, the passport scanners, the compute units. Virtually no solution that we've ever made in 10 years for any customer is identical. Yeah. Because everybody ends up needing something that's just slightly different. And the rate at which that technology is moving in terms of compute, firmware, camera technology, edge computing, pushing things up to the cloud. Like even 2 years ago, it was like, right, push everything up the cloud. Now everything's off the cloud or on the edge. And then you go into edge and there's like 5 different levels of edge, so like which level are we at? And you have to drill into all this stuff. Then you have to be able to future-proof that through modularity to allow the client to go, well, okay, in 2 years' time, we're going to have to switch this camera out to something new. Yeah. We already know that. So we have to have what we call space envelopes to allow and facilitate.
Space envelopes?
So basically the space inside the kiosk or the module that allows us to change a camera or change a payment device, for example. Yeah. So you look at how payment devices have evolved over the last 10 years. Yeah. Gone from quite big, clunky chip and pin readers. I think contactless was like £20 max 10 years ago. Now you just touch your phone. Yeah. That's a good point. Pushing QR codes instead of, you look at the emergence of QR codes from barcodes, scanning a QR code from your phone. So you have to have the screen facing up. You can now push that QR code into your Apple or Google wallet and then just touch through RFID. And then, so that saves you looking up the phone, and that will also work if your phone is flat because there's enough residual charge in the antenna where that data is stored. So, so that then prevents digital exclusion. Yeah. If your phone's flat, you could still go and check out of the airport if you pushed your boarding pass, for example, to your phone.
Okay. So is that like most modern phones then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, providing you got the right phone.
Yeah.
Another point of digital exclusion is people have got an older phone and all of a sudden they can't update the app.
Yeah.
So therefore they're excluded.
Yeah.
And that's called design-in obsolescence in consumer devices. And the sort of image holder sort of school of thought is to design out obsolescence. So how do we make things open? And so we've developed our own USB hubs, which have opened up those ports to allow or try to push out that obsolescence. So they're B2B level as opposed to business to business level as opposed to consumer level. So consumer level will lock things out so you have to buy a new phone in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Whereas we're kind of opening up all those little electronic ports inside that allow all that stuff to flow into the future.
Yeah, I mean, certainly,
It's a lot more than just a kiosk.
Yeah, of course, yeah. No, it's interesting what you say about the payment terminals because that analogy between, someone was talking to me about this the other day, the analogy between payment terminals and phones 10, 15, 20 years ago. A payment terminal was actually very much like a Nokia 6210 brick phone. It was literally just for, you put your card in, you key in your pin, you can even play Snake on the payment terminal. Whereas nowadays the payment terminals got all different sort of apps on there, and obviously there's different security protocols, but it's much more like a smartphone in terms of what you can do with that, and that's we think that's only going to change and increase, and obviously there'll be, as you say, a need to upgrade those payment devices as some of this new technology starts to come through, and having these space envelopes.
Probably see the terminal technology start to get embedded in certain, like, all-in-one computer screens. And then, if you think about like Amazon Go, where you just walk in and then you walk out and you pay. Yeah. And you've basically tethered your credit card or your payment card to a palm scanner. So that your palm has become your payment token. Your face could become your payment token in the future if you do that tethering. So you could just walk in to, shop, pick up your stuff, walk out.
So when someone asks you if you paid, you can go talk to the hand.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. These are the things that will start to, be implemented and we'll see and we'll begin to take for granted. Yeah. And we'll take them for granted because they're subconsciously easy to use and user-centric. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I guess from your point of view, you need to be future-proofing your kiosks, or as you call them, digital endpoints, to allow people to follow those future trends. Obviously with technology moving as quickly as it is, what sort of things can businesses, the end users and possibly even the resellers, what kind of things can they be aware of when offering self-service solutions to their customers?
I think there's a huge amount of insight required to be able to give a sort of consultative solution. There are simpler solutions for smaller enterprises, or where there's kind of what we call like fixed user journeys. So point of sale, for example, is evolving, but
a lot.
Where you've got small chains or independent stores, they don't want or desire a more expensive enterprise solution that might
but then I think that what they do want is certainly flexibility. I mean, even just looking at the point of sale, it's not just a static terminal on the desk next to the door anymore. They're looking, particularly in hospitality, at mobile payments and kiosks are certainly coming into that, even for some of the smaller organisations. So that flexibility needs to be there for sure.
Yeah, I think one thing that we've seen huge growth in the last year or so is what we call portable kiosks. Yeah. So that's again utilising battery technology. So we've got very high power batteries that can last anything from 12 to 36 hours, depending on the amount of devices in the unit. They're on wheels that can be wheeled to an exact point. Therefore, you don't need power and data to them, so there's no trip hazards.
What sort of areas? What kind of
seeing that
applications are you seeing those
used in healthcare, hospitality, mass transit, postal, and the use cases emerge. When we first made the first prototype, we thought we would only be used in aviation, in airports. And actually, what we're seeing is, as we put them in, we've got them in hospitality, healthcare. People can put them exactly where they need them, and they can do that rapidly. The removal of having to plug something in and leave it plugged in and have trailing leads across the floor that cause a health and safety problem. So they wouldn't
been looking around this room.
Yeah, no, I'm just checking if there's any sockets there.
It's a trip hazard everywhere. Stay seated is the best way.
But you can't, again, that goes into sort of accessibility and user-centricness. So, for example, in retail, most retailers lease their premises, and and they're not allowed to drill into the floor to put power and data. It's incredibly expensive. The average cost of putting a data point into a floor for a company is about £6,000, which is a huge amount of money. And then you have all the disruption around that. If you think about like a supermarket or something, coring floors. You put a portable kiosk there, you can put it in that exact spot, and you might have to. You don't know that if you're putting that power and data point in, that it is the right place to put it as well. So you can wheel that in. You can even test it and go, right, well, we think it should be here. Oh, actually, it's better over a meter over here, and angled like this. So you can, it's the opportunity to kind of do that user testing. And what you find is when you can place things in the right place, you undo bottlenecks. You can get multi-use out of these things. You don't have all this other infrastructure because all you need is Wi-Fi, maybe some 5G, which you've probably got anyway. And so these things are kind of transitionary in these organizations, and they're seeing applications in healthcare, in QSR, hospitality, queue busting. We've got QSRs who just push them outside in the shopping mall, so you can order before you get in the store.
So you've not got people queuing up to use the self-service terminal.
So we've got
outside.
They put them at Wembley, and they put them outside on a match day. And the transaction level goes right up. So they've gone from having a problem of the kitchen not being at capacity, and now they're looking at how to increase the capacity of the kitchen to keep up with the increased demand.
But that's what you want, isn't it? It's all of the ordering otherwise crammed into a space of 15 minutes at half time.
So on the front end, our solutions have to be incredibly user centric to make their client happy, or the end user happy, and user centric, easy to use. For the client, they've got to be easy to install, incredibly easy to maintain, and basically deliver a return on investment. Otherwise, they wouldn't purchase them in the first place. So ultimately, everything has to have a return on investment, but that in order to get that return on investment, you have to make the end user happy and easier to use. So you've got this sort of dual tension to, and that's the kind of design challenge for us.
Another interesting thing about that, I would say, is that despite the part of the market that you're involved in, there's an increasing demand for more and more complexity and future proofing. But I think there's also, if I look at parts of the market that we're in, particularly if I look at hospitality, there's still a really high demand for what you would probably describe as a fairly generic kiosk, where it's for use in hospitality. It's there for food ordering. What does that kiosk need to do? Well, it's got to have a screen so you can make menu selections. It's got to have a payment device so that you can pay for what you've ordered. It probably needs a receipt printer in there as well, so you can print a receipt after you've paid. It probably it might need some sort of scanner for loyalty. So there's a relatively limited need in terms of technology, certainly compared to what you've described there. And we still see from the resellers that we work with a good demand for that, in fact, a high and increasing demand for that kind of solution. Do you want to talk a little bit, Ade, about how that, where's the end point for that? At what point do people stop looking at a generic, and generic is probably the wrong word for it, a standard solution.
Yeah.
It does have its limitations. You probably wouldn't be able to, there's a limit to which you can upgrade a product like that, let's say. So
yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting point, and it's a point of like constant debate within our organization to try to simplify and have the word standard product catalog comes up or all the time, or go to market range for a certain sector. But what we see is by the time we've gone and developed that, the technology's already moved. Or there's a new requirement. There's a slightly different vision between, if you look, say, within hospitality, you've got a movement towards biometrics coming in. We've got clients looking, and they'll come and say, well, look, we've got this all-in-one screen. It's got a camera in and it's got a microphone on it. But you put it into a kiosk or a digital endpoint, and because that was designed, for a sort of an ideal scenario, if you like, it's not fit for purpose. When you put that on a stand, you connect a payment device to it. You need to protect the cables. You've got to stop tampering. How do you make it accessible? There's a whole host of things that don't really work, and the client is actually largely getting something that's not truly fit for purpose. It only serves a certain proportion of their customers.
Yeah. I suppose from their point of view, if 70-80% of their customers can use the kiosk, then they've dramatically cut down the percentage of people down to 20-25% of people that they still need to serve at the till.
Not arguing with that point at all. And if it makes a difference, and it's also a different kind of cost level, because you're kind of buying kind of off the shelf in a more competitive environment.
I think that's a huge factor. Especially if you look at some of what's really interesting for me is some of the businesses that are starting to implement self-service. It starts with the big fast food chains, and obviously they're putting in quite a bespoke solution in some cases. You look at a local fish and chip shop, they're not going to spend $5,000 on a kiosk or however much it costs. So something that works for the majority of their customers and costs them significantly less than that, I think
they'll be less worried perhaps of being kind of design-led, more price-driven. They need a solution tomorrow that they can just kind of plug in. And if that takes even 20% of their problem away, to make them more productive, then that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think, as you say, the technology starts to be implemented really more of an enterprise level, and then it sort of trickles down, if you like. And as, companies like us become more sophisticated in how we can tailor and resonate, and it's really not standardizing the product, it's standardizing the process to implement, a bit like when you buy a car. You go and there's car configurators, and you can change the color, and you can put different trims on the wheels, or change the interior. Maybe have a slightly different engine size, but there's limitations to what you can do with each model. So we're kind of framing that. So within healthcare, for example, there's a platform of healthcare kiosks, and they can be tailored to a certain degree. But even within that, we have to have the ability to change out things like the compute device. maybe even on a quarterly basis. You've got obsolescence of devices as well. So all of the printers, the cameras, the compute, there's huge obsolescence in all of those things. We've got a sizing scanner that we first put in a prototype 5 years ago. It cost £15,000 just for the scanner, plus you have to pay substantial annual fee to use it. Now we put a camera in that costs $150, which is like 120 quid, with no other license fee. That's the difference in 5 years, just on one device. There's multiple examples of that type of thing happening.
So I guess the point is then maybe in the same way that 10 years ago kiosks weren't, they were in some places, but compared to now, they were far from ubiquitous. So whilst kiosks themselves have become almost the de facto standard certainly in hospitality and some of the other verticals as well, it's some of these new technologies that are coming in, like, for example, the camera technology that you talked about there, that whereas today in a relatively small hospitality outlet, fish and chip shop or a chicken shop or whatever it would be, they don't currently need that technology. But as we move into the future, that technology may become as critical a part of the kiosk.
Standard, easier to implement, easier to scale. And it's an interesting point. So before image holders, we'd actually had the idea several years before for image holders, but because to implement a kiosk, you had to have a big server box. You had to have all this back-end infrastructure in your premises to support that, because you didn't have the cloud and the internet speeds and all the rest of it. It was very expensive. You didn't have apps. The software cost a fortune. So you had to be a large enterprise to be able to even get off the starting blocks. The difference was, as soon as we saw that IoT and tablet technology evolve to a certain level, it was like a no-brainer. It was like, right, we're moving from what it did previously to starting this company. And that's what's allowed us to scale. But it's the transition of technology that has facilitated that. And we're applying good design practice to that.
So if you look at, it's pretty difficult to look at a typical customer, but if you look at some of your customers, or you have now, or that you're talking to, you'd like to have, in some practical way, what are some practical ways in which image holders is helping them to bring about their vision of the future? What are you doing as a business to bring all of this together and deliver solutions for them?
So we've kind of put together and understood a basic process. We call it the image holder accelerator process. It's very agile methodology to help the customer get something to market, understand what they do, to align the internal stakeholders within these organizations. And ultimately, it's about firstly understanding their vision. What is it they're trying to achieve and why? And often that, when we pose that, that might not have been fully thought through within the organization. So there sometimes has to be a bit of like going back around and really helping them to sort of consultatively understand that. And that has to be the starting block. Is it about the customer? Is it about getting a return on investment? Is it about both? How do we embrace, these things around accessibility, challenging them, helping to share the insight that we have to help formulate that vision. From that, we move into what's the user journey, making sure that that's understood. So the client walks into a shop, or the passenger walks into an airport, or a patient walks into a doctor's surgery, and then what do they do? How do they touch a screen? Do they have to have documentation with them? How does that look like? Do they need to scan it? Do they need to get a printout? Do they need to go and see a person? How do they go and see that? So walking through that in detail.
So you're really kind of taking them through their own user journey, right?
Yeah. And often challenging them and assuming I can kind of. So I'll give you a great example of that. So we had an airline came to us quite recently. Look, we want to do biometric check-in. Here's a list of requirements. We need tilt, we need swivel, we need height adjustment, a whole bunch of other stuff. And we were able to look at that and say, well, look, actually, and they didn't want a screen on it, and they realized that they did need a screen. So we were able to put this through this process, talk to them, ask them why, what the vision was multiple touch points throughout the airport. So it turned out that we needed to have slightly different versions on those different touch points. So same basic thing, but one needed like a two-step verification if it was domestic. It was slightly different to international, because you've got to check your passport as opposed to maybe just an ID. So sometimes we're able to help with that. But what we're able to go back and demonstrate from our knowledge of the camera technology is that their field of vision and the depth of field on the cameras is advanced so much that you don't have to have tilt anymore. You don't have to have it moving up and down. And you don't have to have it swivel. So we presented a fixed solution at a specific height that worked for all passengers, including people with disabilities. So we could pick up from a small child to the world's tallest man just by walking past, ensuring that we got edge compute on that device, that there's a screen that gives the verification, but there's also a rear screen for an agent to know should there be a problem, and really create a user journey right through the airports. It didn't matter at which point people were checking in, if they were like right from entering the airport to in the lobby to by the gate, but you've got a common design language and design aesthetic. So you know that that's the point of reference. It's illuminated in a certain way. When one of the other requirements was face illumination, so backlight your face. You don't need that anymore because the camera technology has moved on so fast. And also we were able to reduce cost and increase speed to market through that understanding. So presenting a really thoroughly well-designed unit, because it doesn't have to be moved in the static. It's less likely to break. It's less likely to be
less moving parts, right? Yeah. I'm thinking of the passport machines at some of the UK airports where you've got to stand and you can see it adjusting to exactly eye level to
exactly.
Get this is kind of doing away with that.
The cost of that technology to implement, the cost of it to maintain. I mean, we've all stood.
It's more than $150 camera, right?
Yeah, and you lose all those like mechanical parts. You put edge compute, so it knows it's got a good read of your face before it sends it up to the cloud, in a millisecond. Yeah. So you're pulling all of these things together into a really compelling solution, which is scalable. It's designed to resonate with the brand colors, with the brand feel, materials that passengers recognize and want to use. Yeah. And that's what becomes what we call like subconsciously intuitive to use. Okay. You almost don't know you're doing it. And that's when we achieve that, that's the kind of design challenge, if you like. And that's like the most satisfying part.
That sounds really cool. It's interesting that you look so closely at the psychology behind it and on all of them.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of design psychology, and that actually, interestingly, we were able to make those fully accessible without any extra sort of disability devices, just through the use of LEDs and some tactile label, like LED backlit labels with symbology and text, to really simplify that. And that's
which, from the perspective of inclusivity, not having to have different devices that different people have to use. It's
exactly
it's a big step forward, right? Yeah.
So you don't have the disability one in the corner. That makes that person with that disability feel excluded. it's about, and it's like making people feel inclusive. And we can only do that through technology and design. That's what we do.
Yeah, very good. Well, it's definitely been enlightening talking to you about that. I've been working on a new thing, almost like we're a proper podcast now. So I've got all proper podcasts finished with some generic questions. So I'm going to throw some of these generic questions at you, Ade. You're the first victim for this.
Oh my goodness! Okay.
I'm just going to fire away with this. So, what will the market look like in 25 years' time?
I think anyone who tried to answer that with any clarity would.
I'm going to need an answer though. You're going to have to just try.
I think the.
Oh, there we go. I'm a fool. I can't even get the stats right.
If you look at how the world's changed in the last 10 years, that's just going to keep accelerating.
Yeah.
AI brings mass personalization at scale. I think, the cascade of this personalization, customization from enterprise, the fish and chip shop in 20 years' time will have different units, and the technology will facilitate its ability and will to have that.
You said that they might even have a card payment device.
They might have a card payment device. I think things will look very different. We'll keep accepting automation. That's it's almost like an unstoppable trend, which is ultimately the reduction of transactional work. And that's happening all over the world. We travel a lot. In Asia, in Africa, this is happening at often a faster pace than it is in the West. I think, often take it for granted. We can be behind.
Asia's the fastest growing market for self-service at the moment. Yeah,
absolutely. So, these economies also have, similar to the West, where you've got an aging population, but you've also got a younger population who just doesn't want to do transactional work. So, there's an expectation for self-service, not just a need.
Very good. And what technology, and that could be within this market or outside of this market, what's getting you excited at the moment, Ade?
Well, AI, edge computing is incredibly exciting what we can do with that. The benefits that it can give across all markets. But I think what's really interesting is how that can help in, healthcare, for example. So, scanning technology, the ability to probably, rather than, you might walk up to a kiosk and it scans you and tell you what's wrong with you before you even have to go and see the doctor.
Yeah. So all of that kind of, it is transactional, isn't it? Things like taking blood pressure, heart rate monitor, those things. I mean, I've got one of those on my arm, for example. It's not, you don't need a healthcare professional who's been trained and done 5 years of education to do that anymore. Yeah.
I mean, we did a lot of work during COVID on health check, but nothing was approved. The ones on your arm that you buy, consumer devices, are currently sort of not. It gives you an idea, but it's not
medical level,
level approved recognition. We're just starting to see those approvals come through because they take about 5 years, and COVID helped drive that forward.
Because there must be a drive within the healthcare organisations themselves to free up the time of their staff in exactly the same way as the one, a fast food restaurant wants to free up the time.
We hear all about, and with the NHS and time saving and trying to drive automation, it all has to happen. It just takes longer in those industries because of approvals and because it's health. Which is often frustrating for people, but I think that's where we're going to see like the biggest sort of benefits for humankind, if you like. Being able to know if you've got an early stage disease just by walking up to a machine that scans you with your clothes on and knows that you've got.
I mean, I suppose it's the healthcare equivalent of you go in to order a burger and you didn't know you wanted a soft drink and some chips to go with it, right? You go in for because you've got a sore throat and you find out something else. It's
Yeah, I mean, in theory, you could have these implemented, so when you're checking into a hotel, it scans your health and tells you, you're basically getting scanned all of the time, potentially, depending on where you go, because it'll become so cost effective and so easy to implement. Because ultimately, if you've got the right devices within a unit, you're just pushing software and feeding that software back to something. And when you look at things kind of conceptually like that, there's huge, it's quite a scary but exciting world.
So it's a lofty business ambition for the next 25 years, the complete elimination of disease. We applaud you for that.
It's only done through partnership and collaboration.
Glad to be part of it. Okay. Last question for you. What have you learned in your career that you wish you'd known when you started out in the industry all those many, many years ago?
What have I learned? Many things.
You wish you'd known when you started out that you know now, maybe?
I think, to be truly collaborative and partner-led. And again, I think that was difficult, a lot more difficult years ago. But as technology has grown, it forces those partnerships and specialization. So we don't do software, we don't touch software, we're never going to develop a device or like a computer or a camera or whatever. There's hundreds, thousands of companies doing, who are just going, right, we've got the best camera in the world. You've got, you're the kiosk architects, with the right modular solutions. Here's multiple software partners, because often if it's an airline, there might be 15 software partners to drive everything in through APIs and all that complexity. If it's a fish and chip shop, there might be one. So different levels of complexity. We can only achieve these things through.
Be a second if they offer car payments.
Good point. But bring those things together, working collaboratively. And it's that kind of collaborative learning, it drives insight, it drives deeper understanding, it helps us understand, things from multiple perspectives. It makes us more, personable, more open-minded, more tolerant it gives us a better understanding of we're living it, whether we like it or not, in a progressively smaller world, and it helps people.
Yeah,
and that's ultimately what's exciting about what we do.
Yeah, that's a great point, I would say, to end this conversation. Not that I want it to end. It's been always a pleasure talking to you. Always good to catch up. Thank you very much for joining me today. And we'll see you all again soon on the next Ask Blue podcast.